A couple weeks back, we went through Craig Button's newest NHL mock draft, and now we're going to go through his final NHL Draft Rankings. A lot of interesting placements in this ranking that I wanted to talk about today, but what is Craig Button's ranking for the 2025 NHL Draft, and what are my thoughts on it? Well, we're going to be breaking it all down right here, right now, so make sure you watch till the end for all the prospect talk, and hit that subscribe button if you're new for more hockey prospect content just like this all throughout the summer. Now, as you guys know, Craig Button is always very eccentric when it comes to the NHL Draft Rankings, and that's why they're so much fun to talk about. Now, we start out with the headline saying Craig's list, lots of talent down the middle ahead of the NHL draft, and that is very agreeable. This is a great draft for sentiment. I haven't really talked about that too much on the channel throughout this year, but if you're looking for talent up the middle, as Craig says, it's right there for the taking. Now, when we get into Craig's list, not much of a surprise here inside the top three. Matthew Schaefer 1, Michael Misa 2, and then Anton Frondell at number 3. Frondell's always been a pretty big favorite of Craig, so it's not surprising to see it at number 3, but after this is where things start to get a little bit more interesting and things really start to open up here. It doesn't get all too crazy with Porter Martone at number 4, but here is where things get crazy because at number 5 is Roger McQueen, who has been a hot topic of debate all throughout this year in terms of the potential, in terms of the ranking. He's been all over the place, and rightfully so. I think is the most controversial prospect in general in this draft class. The reason it's hard to get much consensus on the guy is because there wasn't much consensus throughout this season with him. As a 6'5", 192-pound forward, he's something that barely played this year, and unlike a Matthew Schaefer, wasn't extremely impressive in the games he played. Really was fantastic against lower end competition, but outside of that, failed to really produce all that much. In 17 games in the WHL, 10 goals, 10 assists, 20 points, and only 1 point in 3 games in the WHL playoffs, but continually got injured throughout the year. Having back issues, multiple different injuries, he was somebody that never seemed to stay healthy, always had issues game to game, and just the whole season felt like an absolute disaster for him. And it's a shame because coming into the year, I think he was a pretty definitive top 5 pick, somebody with a ton of potential. The skill set with the puck on his stick was unbelievable, especially for a player of his size. There was a lot to build on there. For me, especially over the course of the season, he's one of the prospects that has dropped the most in my rankings. Still a first rounder for me for sure, but somebody that's more on the later half for me personally, and it's because of a lot of different reasons. For one, obviously the injuries are a major component, and back injuries are nothing to mess with, but also I just wasn't a big fan of him even when he was healthy throughout this season. Sure, the individual skill set with the stick handling ability and the deking, especially in one-on-one situations, is radiant. It's incredibly impressive, but outside of that, I felt he was a little bit selfish in his play. The pace wasn't quite there, and there was just a lot of times, especially with his pace, that I was just left wanting more. He wasn't much of a play driver in the games I watched, and especially in the defensive zone, was way too passive for what I wanted to see out of him. Those are still things that can improve, obviously, as he gets into more games, but just the inconsistency or lack thereof, and just the lack of much pace in his game for me has really dampened my whole projection on him. I think there is still an incredibly talented player here in terms of the actual skill set, but there is still a long ways to go, and considering the injury history and how old he is in this draft class, all of those things together just make me not quite as interested. So to see him above centers like Jake O'Brien, Caleb Denoye, James Hagens, even a Brady Martin at this point, in all honesty, I think is just a little bit strange for me, especially when it comes to the wealth of centers. As Craig mentioned in this article already, I feel like there's so many better ones that I think just bring more potential with their pace than McQueen does still at this point. That leads us on to the rest of the top 8, and we got 3 centers back to back right after Roger McQueen, with Brady Martin going 6th, Caleb Denoye at number 7, and James Hagens at number 8. And you guys probably know what I'm going to think about these rankings here. It's honestly pretty insane to me, even though Roger McQueen has the potential and Brady Martin had a brilliant second half, great World Juniors, that both of them are above Caleb Denoye and James Hagens. I still think the hate train that is coming upon James Hagens right now is truly unprecedented for just how solid he was in this NCAA season, for how good I thought he was playing in the second half of the year as well. It just wasn't a very good fit with him and Pro and Leonard, and I think people were expecting unbelievable production, but still to be a point per game in the NCAA is incredibly hard to do, even if you're in the best situation possible. I still think James Hagens, in terms of the actual potential, absolutely clears a player like Brady Martin. I think Brady Martin has a lot of good physical attributes. I think he'll be a very safe, dependable third-line center in the future, but I don't see too too much more than that. There will be the comparisons to Sam Bennett, but I still think Bennett had way more offense in his draft year than a player like Brady Martin did. And I look at James Hagens and how he's able to control the ice with his speed, with the skating, and the skill set with his playmaking, and it's by far a bigger case to me than a player like Brady Martin, who brings a lot of good intangibles, a lot of good attributes to the game. But I think James Hagens can be great, and I still think he's getting kind of disrespected here, especially at 8th overall, man. That to me is just insane. But that's the thing too, is that even if you go in a different direction for Caleb Denoye, who has had a great second half, brilliant in the QMJHL, I think if you want a more dependable center, Caleb Denoye can absolutely be that. I think Denoye absolutely clears a Brady Martin, clears Roger McQueen in terms of the potential and how likely he is to actually fill out as a middle six centerman. I mean, you've seen what Denoye has been able to do in the QMJHL playoffs this year. I like Brady Martin still. I think he's been a big riser for a pretty big reason, but to have him over Denoye at this point is kind of shocking to me. Again, if you're going to prefer more of the balanced two-way centerman, Denoye I think is right there for the taking, but is also below McQueen and Martin. That just still kind of baffles me. But as this list and many other lists will show, that really shows how balanced this draft class is, how all over the place it can be, and I can still see the reasoning for it. I can't quite see it in McQueen's case, but I can see why you prefer Brady Martin if you want more of an intense playoff style type of player. I still think a Denoye and even a James Hagens will be better in the playoffs because I think they just have more to give in the future. But if you prefer that type of style, then Brady Martin certainly gives you that. Then we go to the rest of the top 10 with the number 9 and number 10 picks, where Radi Mirka comes in at number 9, and then Victor Eklund comes in at number 10. Not really all too surprising there, pretty similar to a lot of other rankings. I do love to see Radi Mirka in the top 10, though. That is my boy. I think he is going to be somebody that I just really love in this draft class for the translatability of his game, the versatility in his overall efforts. He's someone that I love a lot. And then Victor Eklund at 10, I think still is pretty well above even some of the centers we mentioned, like Brady Martin, Roger McQueen, but I get it. Winger, smaller is what it is, even though I think he's another one, like Radi Mirka, that is incredibly translatable. Now going on to the 11 through 15 range, and this also has some pretty big surprises. For one, I really do like Jake O'Brien. He's something that I think is one of the more underrated top centers, at least among this crop, obviously behind Roger McQueen, Brady Martin, Denoye, James Hagens. To me, I would have Jake O'Brien over Denoye, just barely though. I would also have him over Brady Martin, very well ahead of Roger McQueen. If we're talking about players this season, I don't even think it's close between the player that O'Brien has been and a player like Roger McQueen. It's just not even a comparison. The difference between those two players, how much they've led their teams, how much they've been absolutely dominant offensively. I mean, Jake O'Brien has been that. Roger McQueen hasn't. But the rest of it makes sense. Jackson Smith at 12. I do like to see Cole Reshny as high as he is at number 13. I think he's another one that kind of gets a little bit underrated, like a Victor Eklund, because of the size. I do think it's a little bit more of a concern than Eklund's case personally, because Reshny is still a bit smaller and a little bit more slight than Victor Eklund is. I think when they all both fill out when it's all said and done. But I still love the balanced game that Reshny has, and I think the skill and the speed is improving year after year, getting more translatable. He's something that has quickly entered my top 20 again after going off it for a bit. Brilliant second half though, and I'd love to see that. And then for the rest of the top 20, there's some pretty big surprises here. I mean, I was kind of surprised to see Sean Aitchison not a little bit higher than number 16. I think he's somebody that has been rising a little bit higher than that for me personally. You got Cameron Schmidt at number 17, and I want to talk about this guy for a second, okay? This is somebody that I see a lot higher, of course, on public lists than I think what we'll see on NHL Draft Day. This is somebody that I believe will end up slipping to the 3rd round, maybe even a little bit lower than that. And honestly, I think it is 110% deserved. The production in Cameron Schmidt is solid. 40 goals, 78 points, 61 games in the WHL this year. But this is one of the least translatable players, I will say, at least in the top 4 rounds of this year's NHL draft. I just do not see a future NHL player here whatsoever. Of course, the size is a major thing. 5'7", 157 pounds. He is very thin on his skates, gets pushed around quite a bit, and I just don't think the pace, the skill set is quite at the level I'd want for him to be a future NHLer with that size. He has a great shot, great on the power play, and has some agility to him, but I just don't think is able to command a shift. He's not a great puck carrier to me. He's a great puck finisher, and to me, that's okay. It gets by at the junior level. It's obviously gotten by pretty well Vancouver this year, but to me, there's just too many holes in his game. He's too little of a physical player. There's just not enough speed and skating ability, especially in a straight line, for me to really appreciate him as at least even an NHLer in the future, even just a bottom 6 guy. He just doesn't have that intensity. He doesn't have that translatability, and I don't think he has that high-end offense that players similar to his size like Cole Caulfield had in their draft years to be able to overcome that. And by all means, I hope he proves me wrong. I love when small players are able to prove everybody wrong and bring themselves into the NHL level, but I've liked a lot of small players over the years. Cameron Schmidt, though, gives me so many red flags, I would not even touch him until like round 5, personally. So to have a player like Cameron Schmidt right above Braden Coots, who to me is one of the most projectable players of this draft class with the physicality, his intensity, how good he is in creating turnovers and creating great offensive chances, having him above a Braden Coots, which this is what I don't understand, is that if you're going to go for more translatability, if you're going to go for more players you could see playing an NHL-style game, like a Brady Martin over a James Hagens, why is a Cameron Schmidt over a Braden Coots? I don't know. I just don't understand that personally, but hopefully Cameron Schmidt is able to prove me wrong here. The other one I was really curious about was Ivan Ryabkin at number 20, and I will not doubt the skill set, the goal scoring especially. Those two things are undeniable when it comes to Ryabkin. But the write-up here I was actually in pretty big disagreement about. How Craig Button describes Ryabkin is something I pretty fundamentally disagree with. Talking about the center who rose in Button's ranking is Ivan Ryabkin, going from number 27 to number 19, or I guess number 20 on the list, even though it's not number 19. I don't know about that. Anyways, saying how he arrived in the USHL at the end of December after terminating his contract in the KHL, and through 27 games, got 19 goals, 30 points in the playoffs, and helped Muskegon win the Clark Cup in the USHL. He says he's another player that has a real determination, and I think his determination is more on the offensive side of things. He's got a significant offensive bent to his game. He can shoot the puck, and he reminds me a little bit of Tomas Hertl at the same age. The way he moves about the ice, the way he gets himself into spots to shoot and score. Now, the last part here, I can totally agree with the shooting ability, the instincts there, and the knack for the net. I agree with that for sure. But the determination is one that I was like, I don't know about that. If there's one thing about Ivan Ryabkin that I keep coming back disappointed about is the determination, is the work ethic, is how he actually puts himself out there shift to shift. It feels like a lot of times he's waiting for the play to come to him, and when it does, he's able to shoot and score. If he gets the puck on this stick in the offensive zone in the slot, he is going to make you pay. And that is why he's got so many goals in the USHL this year. But I do always come back a little bit disappointed with the physical play, with the engagement. If he is actually putting in 100% effort, this is going to be one of the best prospects in this draft class. 100%. He has shown that in the past. It's just an inconsistent part of his game. But that's what's most frustrating to me, is that it's never seemingly consistent, shift to shift. It's never at a position where you are really excited about it. And in Ryabkin's case, even though the skill set is there, the goal scoring is premium in this draft class. The effort is the biggest thing that I always have an issue with. So seeing the determination, even on the offensive side of things, is a strength, is, I don't know, I'm mischaracterizing him a little bit, at least for me. Still, though, a great player, and likely will be a first-round pick for me, but more in the later half of the first round for sure. Though, as a top 20 guy, I could still see it just on skill set alone. I did want to mention that he also has 2 goaltenders inside the first round, not just Joshua Ravensbergen, but also Jack Ivankovic, which is very interesting. I think I do prefer Jack when it's all said and done, even though Ravensbergen, of course, has the size. Ivankovic has been brilliant in the U18s this year. And even though I'm a little bit less hesitant on him being a Dustin Wolf, like Craig compares him to in this article, I think he will be potentially a solid backup in the NHL. I don't think he has quite starter potential. I don't think he's Dustin Wolf, but still a solid goaltending prospect. Though, again, fascinating. I think this is the first list I've ever seen where there's 2 goalies inside the first round, but I love that boldness there. I will say, though, over Carter Bear, players like Ben Kindle, Logan Hensler, I don't know if I quite see that. There are still a lot of hurdles for smaller goaltenders to climb, and I think especially guys like Carter Bear, way more translatable, way more likely of making the NHL, at least in my opinion, to being solid, effective NHLers. And even Ivankovic is high. I still don't see him being a fantastic starter or anything, so that's just my 2 cents. Especially over my boy Ben Kindle, man. I absolutely love that kid, adore him. 27 overall is absolutely criminal for the skill set here. I get that he's not a super huge player, and I think his game might rely a little bit more on physicality, and that might be something that spooks some people, but I don't know. He still has a lot of intensity to me and still projects very well against physical competition in the WHL. So I think as long as he gets a little more strong, I still think he'll be an effective NHLer, and that skill set is something to die for. In the later first round, especially if you're getting that 27 overall, that to me is an absolute steal. After the first round, we're just going to touch on the interesting rankings here that I come across. First, Colin Potter. Craig has never been a big fan of him throughout the year. I get it at a certain extent, but to me, he's still a top 10 prospect in this draft class. This skill, the speed, the intensity, how much he puts himself out there, how good as well he plays against physical competition in the NCAA. I thought he had an incredibly underrated year for Arizona State, and is somebody that should be a first rounder, even though there's a chance he might end up slipping. My thing is, why is he below Nathan Bem? I just watched Bem for the first time a couple weeks back. If there was a first overall, if we announced a first overall pick for the player that stood around and watched the puck the most, Nathan Bem would certainly go first overall. So the fact that Bem is above a player like Potter, who just brings so much intensity, so much dog on the bone type of style, compared to a player like Bem, I mean, what does he even bring that much? The goal scoring is solid, I would say. He gets himself into goal scoring positions okay. But that's pretty much it. He doesn't even use his body that much, at least from what I've seen. That's just me ranting on one game watch from Bem, but maybe that's just because I love Colin Potter so much, man. I mean, if he goes 46th overall, you will take that, or at least I will take that any day. Another player I was really surprised to see lower, and this is another one that was also on the U18 team for the U.S. this year, was Cole McKinney. And again, we've seen a lot of players in this list higher because of the translatability, and Craig saying as much with the Brady Martin selection. Cole McKinney is one of the most projectable centers, I would say, in this draft class. One of the smartest, one of the most safe defenders out there in terms of the open ice defending. He's so good in that aspect, and to me is one of them that projects the most onto the bottom six in the NHL. To see him at 56, especially below some players from the QHAHL like Lucas Beckman, I mean, Philip Valou, I mean, all respect to them, of course, but Cole McKinney, man, that's somebody that I think is going to go pretty underrated, and I would not be surprised if he just fills out as a solid NHL centerman that goes under the radar. But those are pretty much my final thoughts on the newest Craig Button NHL draft rankings. A lot to talk about here, and a lot of really interesting conversations to start. Of course, that's what I love most about Craig Button's rankings. It always puts things in a different perspective, and I love to debate all these different prospects. And let me know in the comments down below for you guys, what was your biggest surprise on this list? Did you agree? Did you disagree with the rankings? And what do you think of everything here today? Of course, if you enjoyed the breakdown, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe, and hit the notification bell, and share the video with all the hockey fans you guys know online. And click on this card, of course, for all of my Hockey Prospect Talk right in one playlist. And of course, if you want to watch if you guys want to check out the full article of all the rankings, all the write-ups, of course, that'll be in the description down below for you to check out. I hope you have a fantastic hockey day, though, y'all. And I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.